Hello, today we're going to make a realistic looking map for your tabletop RPG game. All you need is some paper. I'm using packaging paper from my last impulse buy, and I just cut it down to size and flattened it out as much as possible, and a writing utensil, and the internet, which you have because you're watching this video. Let's get started. Okay, so for this map, I want to create a world that has lots of water and islands and bedazzling coastlines. A place that comes to mind for me in the real world that resembles this is the Far East, the South Indies, or depending on where you are in the world, you might call them something differently. Now, we are trying to use as little creative energy as possible, remember? And we still want this map to look realistic. So we are just going to copy the globe. Now I hear what you're saying. I can't do that. I have a cartographer in my group and an ex-Navy captain, and they're just gonna stand up and leave the table right away if I do that. Don't worry. We can, if we just rotate the map a little bit, it makes even the most familiar landscapes seem foreign and disorienting. Plus, we can change it a little bit. Maybe if you're from the Philippines, this is still too close to home, so you can choose another part of the world. You just think about what kind of map you want. Think about where in the world it resembles that, and you can take it, move it around, and copy it. All right, this is looking pretty good. I want a regional map with lots of islands and coastal lands, but not so big that it's like a whole continent level. This is looking pretty good right here. I like this. There's lots of different peninsulas that are all coming in. This looks almost fake when you have it this close. It seems like it's not realistic at all, but it is. And if your players have a problem with it, just tell them you can tell them your little secret and be like, actually, this is a real place. This is gonna have a lot of what I want. I want destinations that are far away that require a boat to get to. I want some narrow channels that might challenge my travelers. If they have to get past pirates or monsters, those channels can fence them in, so to speak. And we're just going to start drawing this to get started. Now, you may want to, when you first start, think, where do I want my players to start? What kind of landscape do I want them to start in? And go from there. If let's take like a guarded cove somewhere. Might be a good, let's take like up here. Maybe this is our starting point up here. And they have this narrow harbor area, and they're going to come out to the wide ocean. So we're just going to take this, and you're just going to copy it, basically. It doesn't have to be exact, because nobody cares, really. I've learned from making maps that if you sweat the little stuff, your players won't notice. All right, we're going to leave this open. Looks like there's you can't see it maybe, but there's like a canal or a waterway through there. And so we're going to leave that open. And then if these are going to be swamplands, these look like they might be swamplands. If you're watching along, you can add your own music to the background. In fact, you should pause right now, get a piece of paper, and come and do this with me. I bet you could do just as well as I could, probably better. So we could do this together. All right, and we're just going to copy. I'm copying this up here. Now I'm getting to the point where I might want to take some care. I take them to a harbor that maybe my players are starting at. Up here somewhere. It's going to be good. We're going to have some swamplands nearby. And like I said, if you worry too much, spend too much energy worrying, making sure every detail is correct, you're just going to waste that energy because your players aren't going to know or care or see the difference. Alright, so we're going to do this big. It's going to be our big, but we need some land for them to explore. This is going to be that continent. So I'm going to make this come way down here. And we're just going to worry about the little islands later. Now what this is going to do is this is going to make part of the map unseeable, some of the landmass unseeable. What that will do for us is it'll allow us later, if we decide we need more land for them to travel through, we can just be like, oh, well, you need to go find a map that illustrates this part of the world over here. And if you don't do that, you don't know where you're going. See, this side of the map has some little fingers coming out. Alright, look at this. It's quick and dirty. Now, I have to admit, when I play D&D as a player, I love having maps. I feel so blind if I have no idea the world that I'm playing in. I know that not everyone cares, not everyone even notices those things, but to me it makes a world of difference. If I'm not playing a railroaded campaign where I actually have choices to make as a player, I feel like when you're adventuring, one of your biggest choices you're making is where to go. So you also have to think as a DM, as a game master, if you are creating a map for people, where, and they choose to go someplace you hadn't expected, what might be in that land? Now, you could just say, oh, that island is uninhabitable, or uninhabited, but you can only say that so many times before it feels like a cop-out, you know what I mean? So when you're making this map, taking the time, I like to think about where certain races might be, certain different types of creatures might reside. If you're going to have elves, maybe you have like high elves that are secluded and they don't mingle with other people. So we're going to put them on an island away from everyone else, and maybe their harbors are restricted to only elf friends. We're going to make this map over here, this island over here. Let's think about that for this land. This will be the High Elves island over here. Now this is going to be hard to read at the moment, even in person, until we put some color in the map. But I promise you, once you put some color in this map, the water will pop out and the land will pop out. Alright, now I like maps. I like giving maps to players and telling them, or maybe in the beginning they don't have a map. And if they have to go explore and they're like, well, I don't know where that is. I tell them, well, there's a couple libraries in the area. There's a couple trading guilds. Perhaps you can convince one of those to sell you a map so that you can use it. You don't have to just give them the map. You know, make it a challenge for them to acquire it. Spend some of that gold of theirs. And then maybe the map that they acquire isn't that accurate. So maybe it only has a certain limited amount of land plotted. You can play with it, you know. Use it to your advantage. If you don't have time to finish a map, just leave it blank and think to yourself, well, if the players need to go that direction, they're traveling blind. They don't have information yet. All right, we're just gonna do this quick. I might take more time if I was planning to use this map, but I feel your impatience. So we're gonna go up here. Now all these coastlines here are pretty smooth, but you know, you can make them however you want. You can do Norwegian coastlines that are all jaggedy like this, really detailed. You can do wide swooping turns. Part of it's going to depend on how far away your scale of your map. Some of it just is your own personal preference. Alright, we're having some fun here. We're going to make this a harbor over here. I'm going to have this be like Pirates Cove maybe down here. It's going to be treacherous waters to navigate. Bunch of islands. Alright, we're just thinking about maybe how we can use this map. Alright, this is good enough. Now, at this point you want to think about if you need jungles or mountains or deserts, where you're going to put those. It's not uncommon in the real world to have dry coastal lands close to very wet coastal lands. Let's say this is going to be all flat swamp lands over here. So we're going to leave that be for a moment. And this is going to have, we're going to have like a little I'm going to have this intrigue up here. I'm going to have this canal through here. And maybe this is controlled. This canal is controlled by, I don't know, maybe there's a big capital city right here. And we'll name that city later. But they control the mouth of this canal. And if you go past there, you're going to need to get special permission. Maybe the city we're starting is over here. All right. Now, first, before we get too carried away with the cities, let's put in some mountains. You're going to start out with a squiggly line. Like so. And then we're going to start defining it. Like I said, I normally do this in pencil, so if I make a mistake, it's easier to fix. These kind of resemble mountain peaks. Sometimes the roundy ones look a little lower. They start looking a lot like peaks when you start branching off. Don't worry about it being perfect. Like I said, your players aren't going to tell if you do it perfect, because they are, for the most part, going to ignore this. Let's see, which way should we go with this mountain? Let's go back behind there. This is easier to do with a pencil. I don't have a pencil, but you want to start shading in some of the areas to give it depth. Just imagine a light shining. I'm working with the light I have in this room, so the light's coming from over here, from this direction. Oh, it's from this direction. You see my hand? So that just makes it easier for me to imagine where the light and the shadow should go. And if you make a mistake, just go with it, right? Look, that's kind of a mistake. And just ignore it. Mistake, who cares? No one's going to notice. Now, you also want to make sure you have cities on your map and lands, right? And you got to leave empty spots to fill in your cities. So let's say, oh, I'm tired of filling this in, right? Let's pretend you're not sure even what you want over here. Like maybe you're going to name this land. Let's just name it the, let's say the Smoky Mountains. Mountains, all right? If this is the High Elves, the land of the High Elves, you can just put High Elves. Hopefully with nicer handwriting than my own. And we could name this Skeleton Bay. Can we fit that in here? Skeleton Bay. That kind of gives a hint to players what's going to be there. So the most important part of coloring your map, you can pretty much get away without coloring anything, but you have to delineate the water from the land, because I guarantee this is not that much easier to see in person as it is for you guys on screen. So the way I do it typically is I just take a blue pencil and I start shading at the coastlines. Your brain will just start separating the land and the ocean as you do this. Now this takes some time. It's well worth it. This sort of makes the map pop. I'm sure many of you out there are better artists than I am, but just the making of the map itself is hard, right? So let's talk about something else in a map that took me a while to just come to terms with. That is, how long does it travel? As soon as you pull a map out, one of the first questions your players will ask you is, how long does it travel from Wilmersdorf to Skeleton Bay down here? Instead of doing distances, keeping track of miles and stuff for distances, I usually will simply keep track of time. So maybe 1 inch takes a day. So if you take your finger here, be like, oh, that takes 3 days. 3 days to travel there. Don't even worry about miles and kilometers or whatever you like to use, because then they're going to ask, well, how many miles can we travel in a day? And so what you really want to know is how long it's going to take to get there. Have your scale based on how long it's going to take a group to travel under normal circumstances. And then that helps you with your cities, because in the old days, cities were usually roughly a day's travel from each other. And that when people were traveling, they would travel for a day and then rest at a spot where there was an inn. And that can make it simple for you. So if you were having this, you'd be like, well, these are two major towns, Wilmersdorf and Warnersville. So that's going to take about 3 days. Maybe we could put 2 towns in here. Maybe a town right there on that road. Maybe this town over here is a little off from the beaten path. Right on this little harbor is another harbor town. Somewhere like that. All right, so now we're getting scale now. If you see this, we're looking at, this is kind of a wide map. If we're having 4 towns right in this little spot right here. And let's name this town Z. All right, and we can name this town Salmon Bay. The reason why I'm making this map such a large map is because when you travel by sea, you can usually travel much further, much faster. So then you have to decide, well, how far can you travel by boat based on your boat? And then maybe when your players are trying to come up with find transportation across the ocean, across the seas, you can just have that listed on whatever boat information you give them. If they have a skipper or a 2-mast boat, or maybe they're just in a little tiny rowboat, you can say, well, this boat, if you're rowing this boat, you can only travel 1/2 inch a day. But if you have a sailboat, you can travel 3 inches a day. And then that will give them a very easy way to measure how far they can go before they need a rest. I'm going to work on this, and you can work on it too on your map. Maybe you're going to put some sea creatures here. Like if you put a sea creature here, this is D&D after all. Your players are going to ask, oh, is there really a sea monster there? Maybe I'll put a giant... Oh boy, I'm putting myself on the spot. Can I draw a giant tortoise? Sea creature of some sort? That guy looks friendly, huh? Let's put a little tail. It's turning more into like a dinosaur than a tortoise. It's alright. It's D&D. It can be whatever you want. Put some water around it to show. As soon as you put that in there, your players are going to be like, oh man, if we go over there, there's some sea creatures over there. We got to be careful. So maps are great because you can insinuate without using any words, and you can let your players' imagination run wild with what possibilities there are. The only problem is, then if they decide to go way over here to this port that you named, let's say you put Treasure Cove over here on this side, well, they're going to be, well, we need money. Let's go to Treasure Cove. Let's see what's over there. So then you got to be creative on the spot. But that's the fun part. That's the part I like. I like when my players help me come up with the story. They feel like they have agency because they do. And you don't have to be as creative because your players will be like, oh my word, you name that Blood Bay? Does that mean there's vampires over there? Oh, actually, yeah, it does mean there's vampires over there. Thank you for helping me out with that. So when you do something like this, you let your players help you write the story on the fly. They won't even realize they're doing it. But it also makes them feel smart because they're like, man, I got that right. And you feel smart because you're like, man, I didn't have to brainstorm for 30 minutes to decide what was going to be there and make it interesting. All right, so this takes a while. We're going to take a break, and in our next video, we will focus on creating land types. Let me put it this way. If you guys like this video so far, then please hit the like button. Let me know. This is a new thing I'm trying and I'm learning, so bear with me. I understand this wasn't perfect. Put some suggestions in the comments. Let me know what you would like to see. And if this video gets, even if it just gets 200 likes, then we'll continue this map in a second video. And if we continue the map completely, Maybe I'll scan it, make a PDF out of it, and link it. If you want me to finish it, hit that like button, let me know. It's really encouraging when you guys reach out and talk to us. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.